Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's devotional series. We're going to be looking at what having a heart of worship is. So it's going to be me and Connor talking a little bit about some different topics that we've come up with, and they're going to be going out each day this week, Monday to Friday. And the first thing we want to look at is going to be, what is worship? So what does the Bible say about worship? What does worship look like? And why is it important? So I'm going to quickly read from Romans 12, verse 1. And it says, "And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him." So this here is our Bible verse of reference, and this really sets a good example for what worship is and what it should be. It's about it being a living and holy sacrifice to God, and the kind that he will find acceptable. So this is the best way to sort of define what worship is and what the Bible says about it. And when we think about worship, quite often we can think about singing to God and singing praises to him. But that's not just it. That is one form of worship. But I want to encourage you that worship is using the qualities and talents that God has given to you and using them to the best of your ability to glorify his name and for what he's done for you.
Yeah, me and Tim were discussing this kind of before we made this call and before we started recording. And there was a lot to say about worship, and we're struggling to kind of condense it all down, but ultimately we came up with these few points. First and foremost, as Tim kind of shared, worship is a command. It's a command from God. It's something that we're called to do. It's something that we're made to do. So therefore, when God commands us to do something, we should do it. And what does that look like? I think we obviously know that traditionally we have congregational sung worship, but again, as Tim mentioned, there's so many different ways that we can worship, whether it's through music or through our job or through whatever gifts and talents God's given us. But with that also comes that worship is a choice, and it's what we give our time to. Because if you're not worshiping God, you're worshiping something, right? We're designed to worship and we're built to worship, but I even find myself, I can spend more time on social media than my Bible app on my phone. I can, we could be spending more time worshiping our football team than God. It's what we give our time to. It's what we celebrate. It's what we devote our time to. And it should be one of our priorities, because so much happens when we worship God. Whether worship is used as a weapon, as it says, when we worship, we're entering into a spiritual kind of warfare when we worship, whether through song or whatever we do, however we worship. It is spiritual warfare that we're joining in with, and it is a weapon. It's a way of standing up. And it's also a way, in some ways, I really love this kind of idea. Me and Tim were talking about it. It's like we're kind of got this big, like at a sports event, like those big sponge fingers. I almost feel like it's like you're pointing at God and sort of saying to the world, this is the one who made you. This is the creator. This is who we're here to celebrate. Look what he's done. It's a celebration. It's an act of reverence. It's a way to glorify God. And yeah, it's a way of pointing the finger, as we say, to show the world who he is. But ultimately as well, worship is, if we're called to do it, if we're made to do it, if it's what we do, it's a way of maintaining that relationship with God, and it's a way of having communion with him. There's so much that happens through worship. And it doesn't always have to be through musical worship, as we said. So our question for you, maybe as we leave and as we end this first episode, is how do you worship God? What do you do? What are the gifts and talents that he's given you? You might want to ask your wives, husbands, your kids, or your parents, your friends who know you well. What gifts has God given me? What do they see in you? And how can you use that to worship God? Particularly during this time, how can we pick up that big sponge finger and point to God and be like, this is the one that it's all about. So thanks for joining us for this first episode. We're looking forward to joining again tomorrow, or whenever the second one comes out, just to talk more about worship and our relationship with God. See you later.
See ya.